In the winter of 1987, 12 soldiers walked into the Canadian wilderness for a survival training exercise. Only 3 came back. What they brought out with them wasn't just frostbite and trauma. It was something that still whispers in the frozen dark, something that knows your name before you even hear it coming. The briefing room at CFB Wainwright smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. February 1987. I was 23 years old, a corporal in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I thought I'd seen everything winter could throw at me. I was wrong. Major Garrett stood at the front, his breath visible even indoors. The heating system had been failing for weeks, but nobody complained. Complaining about cold in Alberta was like complaining about sand in a desert. Operation Frostbite, he said, tapping a map of northern Alberta. 10 days, wilderness survival training. You'll be dropped 60 kilometers northeast of Fort McMurray in the Athabasca region. Your objective, navigate back to the extraction point using only basic supplies. I glanced at the 11 other soldiers in the room. We were a mixed unit, some infantry, some engineers, 1 medic. I recognized most faces. There was Corporal Davies, a wiry guy from Newfoundland who never stopped caulking. Sergeant Chen, our de facto leader, a woman with 15 years of experience and a stare that could freeze diesel fuel. Private Morrison, barely 19, fresh-faced and eager in that dangerous way only new recruits are. Weather window looks stable, Garrett continued. -30, but clear. You've all done cold weather training. This is the real thing. No radios, no GPS, compass, map, knife, matches. Old school. Davies leaned over to me. "Bet you $20 Chen has us building snow shelters in under 2 hours. I didn't take the bet. We loaded into the Chinook at 0600 hours the next morning. The sky was that peculiar shade of purple-gray that only exists in the far north, where the sun barely remembers how to rise. The helicopter's rotors beat against the frozen air, and I watched the base shrink beneath us until it was just a cluster of lights swallowed by the endless white. The landscape below was alien. Spruce forests so dense they looked black from above, frozen lakes like shattered mirrors, and snow. Miles and miles of unbroken snow that seemed to stretch to the edge of the world. 30 seconds, the loadmaster shouted. We stood, checking our packs one final time. 60 pounds each. Tent materials, sleeping bags rated to -50, rations, water purification tablets, medical supplies. Everything we needed to survive. The helicopter descended into a clearing surrounded by towering pines. Snow erupted and blinding clouds around us as we jumped down, one by one. The cold hit me like a physical force, not just cold, but a kind of aggressive, invasive cold that found every gap in my layers and burrowed into bone. The Chinook lifted immediately, and within seconds it was gone. The silence that followed was absolute. Not peaceful, oppressive. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the blood moving through your veins. "All right," Chen said, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Form up. We've got 10 clicks before nightfall. Morrison, you're on point. Davies, rear. Let's move." We moved. The first 3 days were textbook. We covered good ground, built solid shelters, kept morale up despite the cold that turned our breath into ice crystals and made every movement an exercise in pain management. It was on the 4th day that things started to feel wrong. We were following a frozen creek bed, using it as a natural highway through the dense forest. The trees here were different, older, twisted by wind and time into shapes that seemed almost deliberate. The snow was deeper, undisturbed except for our tracks. Morrison stopped suddenly. "Sergeant." Chen moved forward. "What is it?" He pointed at the snow ahead. There were tracks. Large tracks, four-toed but elongated, almost human-like in their stride pattern. "Moose," Davy said confidently. "Has to be." But Chen crouched down, examining them closely. She was silent for a long moment. When she stood, her expression was carefully neutral. "We keep moving. Stay alert." "That's not a moose print," I said quietly, just to her. She looked at me. "I know."
Over the next 2 days, we saw more tracks, always parallel to our route, never crossing it, like something was following us, matching our pace, staying just out of sight in the trees. The temperature dropped, -40, -45. Our water bottles froze solid despite being kept inside our jackets. Morrison developed frostbite on 2 fingers. Davies stopped joking. And then there were the sounds. It started on the 6th night. We'd made camp in a dense stand of spruce, building a fire despite the smoke risk. We needed the heat more than we needed stealth. The flames cast dancing shadows across the snow, and beyond their light, the forest was a wall of absolute darkness. I was on second watch, sitting close to the fire, feeding it small branches to keep it alive. Everyone else was in their sleeping bags, breaths visible as small clouds in the frigid air. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Not words exactly, but the suggestion of words, like someone speaking just below the threshold of understanding, consonants without vowels, vowels without consonants. It came from the trees to the north, then the east, then behind me. I stood, hand on my knife, scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" My voice cracked the silence like breaking glass. The whispering stopped. In my sleeping bag, Davy stirred. "What's wrong?" "I heard something." He sat up, alert now, reaching for his knife. We stood together, backs to the fire, watching the tree line. Nothing moved, but the silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was waiting. "Probably just wind," Davies said. But he didn't believe it. I could hear it in his voice. We didn't sleep well that night. Morning came gray and lifeless. We broke camp quickly, efficiently, no one speaking more than necessary. The tracks were back, closer now, circling our campsite multiple times during the night. Chen gathered us. "We're 2 days from extraction. We push hard, we can make it by tomorrow night." "What about the tracks?" Morrison asked. His voice was high, stressed. "Animals," Chen said firmly. "Curious, not aggressive. We keep moving." But her eyes betrayed her. She was afraid. We all were. We moved faster that day, sacrificing caution for speed. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees pressing closer, the sky visible only as thin strips of gray between black branches. It was mid-afternoon when we realized Private Hutchins was gone. Hutchins, quiet, competent, a 30-year-old from Saskatchewan. He'd been at the rear of our column, 5 meters behind Davies. We stopped for a water break, turned around, and he simply wasn't there. "Hutchins!" Chen shouted. "Hutchins!" No response, just that oppressive, waiting silence. We backtracked immediately. His footprints were clear in the snow, walking normally, no sign of struggle. Then about 30 meters after, they simply stopped. Not faded, not covered by fresh snow. Stopped, like he'd been plucked straight up into the air. Beside where his tracks ended, there was a single word scraped into the bark of a massive spruce tree. Hungry. The letters were crude, carved with something sharp, and they were weeping sap that had frozen into amber tears. "What the fuck?" Davies whispered. Chen's hand shook as she touched the word. "We need to move. Now." "We can't leave him." "He's gone, Morrison. We move or we die here too." We moved. But the whispering followed us now, constant, just at the edge of hearing. Sometimes it sounded like Hutchins' voice calling for help. Sometimes it was my mother's voice singing a lullaby I hadn't heard since childhood. Sometimes it was nothing human at all, just sounds that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. That night we didn't make camp. We kept walking, stumbling through the darkness, following Chen's compass by the light of our single flashlight. The batteries were dying, the beam growing weaker. And then Private Morrison started laughing. Not normal laughter, the kind of laughter that comes from a broken place, high and sharp and wrong. "Morrison, stay with us," I said, grabbing his shoulder. He turned to look at me and his eyes were empty. "It's so hungry," he said. "Can't you hear it? It's been hungry for so long." Then he ran, just bolted into the darkness, still laughing. We tried to follow, but he was fast, and the forest swallowed him in seconds. His laughter echoed for a long time, growing more distant, more distorted, until it didn't sound like laughter at all. Then it stopped. We were 9 now.
Sergeant Chen called a halt. We'd been walking for 18 hours straight. People were stumbling, hypothermic, breaking. "We rest for 2 hours," she said. "Then we push for extraction. We're close." We huddled together in a small clearing. No fire, just body heat and desperation. Davies was crying silently. Someone else was praying in French. I couldn't feel my feet anymore. That's when Shen told us the truth. "This isn't the first time," she said quietly. "Operation Frostbite. They run it every 5 years. Usually, everyone makes it back. But sometimes there are losses, disappearances." "You knew?" Davies' voice was sharp with betrayal. "You knew something was out here?" "I knew there were stories, indigenous legends about this area, about something that hunts in winter, something that was once human, but became something else. The Cree call it the Wendigo." The word hung in the frozen air between us. "That's folklore," I said. "That's not real." Chen looked at me with dead eyes. "Then where are Hutchins and Morrison?" No one had an answer. The whispering started again, louder now, coming from all directions, and with it came footsteps. Not animal, not human, something in between. The crack of breaking ice, the snap of dead branches, the wet sound of breathing through a throat that shouldn't exist. We saw it then, just for a moment, at the edge of our failing flashlight beam. Tall, impossibly tall, skeletal thin, with limbs that bent at wrong angles. Its skin was gray-white, pulled tight over protruding bones. But the worst part was its face, or what remained of one. Sunken eye sockets filled with darkness, a jaw that hung too low, filled with yellow teeth, and antlers, massive, twisted antlers that grew from its skull like frozen tree branches. It stared at us with those hollow eyes, and it whispered our names, one by one, starting with Private Davies. We ran. Discipline, training, protocol, all of it disappeared in the face of that thing. We scattered into the forest like startled deer, and that was our mistake. That's what it wanted. I ran with 2 others, Corporal Zhang and Private DeMarco. We crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at our faces, snow dragging at our legs. Behind us, someone screamed. The sound cut off abruptly, replaced with a wet, tearing noise that I still hear in my nightmares. We ran until we couldn't breathe, until our lungs burned with frozen air, until we collapsed in a dense thicket of pine. "Did we lose it?" DeMarco gasped. Zhang was checking his compass frantically. "East. Extraction is east. Maybe 12 clicks." "We're not going to make it," I said. The truth of it was absolute. We were exhausted, frostbitten, hunted by something that shouldn't exist. That's when Chen told us the truth. "Over here. I found shelter." We looked at each other. Zhang grabbed my arm. "That's not Chen."
How do you know? Because Chen is dead. I saw her take it 5 minutes ago. The voice came again, closer now. Please, help me. I'm hurt. It was perfect. Every inflection, every speech pattern. If Zhang hadn't seen her die, I would have believed it completely. We stayed silent, pressing ourselves into the snow, barely breathing. The thing that wore Chen's voice walked past us. I could see it through the branches, that skeletal figure, but now it was hunched over, trying to make itself smaller, more human. Its jaw moved, forming words in Chen's voice, but the jaw moved wrong, like a puppet with broken strings. "Where are you?" it called. "We need to stay together." It stopped 10 meters away, sniffed the air, turned slowly in our direction. We ran again. Zhang died when he fell through ice crossing a frozen stream. The crack was like a gunshot, and then he was gone, pulled under by the current. DeMarco and I tried to reach him, but the ice was too thin, too unstable. We watched his hand disappear beneath black water. The whispering had his voice within minutes. By first light, it was just me and DeMarco. We could see the extraction point, a frozen lake maybe 2 clicks ahead. The helicopter was supposed to arrive at noon. We had 4 hours. "We're going to make it," DeMarco said. His lips were blue, his words slurred. "We're going to make it and tell them what's out here." But I knew better. I'd been counting. 12 soldiers entered these woods. Now there were 2. The thing had taken 10 in 6 days. It was patient, it was smart, and it was still hungry. We made it to the lake by mid-morning. The ice was thick, solid, safe to cross. On the far side, through the trees, I could see the clearing where the helicopter would land. "Come on," DeMarco said, stepping onto the ice. I followed. We were halfway across when the ice beneath DeMarco exploded upward. The Wendigo erupted from below like something birthed from hell itself. It had been waiting there in the frozen water, patient as death. It grabbed DeMarco with arms that were too long, pulled him down. He screamed once, a sound of pure terror and agony. Then he was gone, pulled through the ice into darkness. The Wendigo rose from the hole, water streaming from its skeletal frame, freezing instantly into icicles that hung from its bones like grave ornaments. It looked at me with those empty sockets, and it smiled. Or tried to. Its jaw cracked and dislocated, hanging loose, and from that broken mouth came a sound, not a whisper this time, but words. "Still hungry?" The voice was layered. Chen's voice, Morrison's laugh, Hutchin's scream, all of them together, all of them trapped inside that thing. I ran, slipped on the ice, fell, crawled, got up, ran again. The tree line, the clearing. Behind me, the sound of claws on ice getting closer, closer. The helicopter.
I burst into the clearing, screaming, waving my arms. The pilot saw me, started to descend. I could see the loadmaster's confused expression as he registered that I was alone. Behind me, at the tree line, the Wendigo stopped. It stood there, in the shadows where the forest met the clearing, and it watched as I was pulled aboard the helicopter. As we lifted into the gray sky, I could still see it standing there, motionless, waiting, always waiting. The debriefing lasted 3 days. I told them everything. They recorded it all, took notes, asked questions. Major Garrett sat across from me with that same neutral expression he'd had in the briefing room. When I finished, he closed his notebook. "Corporal," he said carefully, "you've been through severe trauma. Extreme cold, exhaustion, dehydration. Hypothermia can cause hallucinations, vivid ones. It wasn't a hallucination. Then what was it?" I looked him in the eye. "You tell me, because you knew. You send people into those woods knowing something is there." He didn't deny it. Just stood, gathered his papers. "You're being granted medical discharge, full benefits. The official report will list the other 11 as victims of exposure and navigational error." That's not what happened. That's what the report will say. I was escorted out that day, given papers to sign, NDAs, psychological evaluation forms. They gave me a ride to the nearest town and left me at a bus station with a duffel bag and a prescription for sleeping pills. I've spent the last 37 years trying to forget, but some things don't let you forget. I still hear the whispering sometimes, not in the wind, not in dreams, in quiet moments, in empty rooms. The sound of something that's still hungry, still hunting, still waiting in the frozen places where men fear to go. I've done research over the years, newspaper archives, indigenous oral histories, military records I wasn't supposed to access. Operation Frostbite has been running since 1962. Every 5 years, different units, different soldiers. And every single iteration, there are disappearances. Never all of them, usually 2 or 3, sometimes 10. Just enough to be explained away, just mysterious enough to keep from public knowledge. The Cree were right. The Wendigo is real. It's a spirit of hunger and winter, born from cannibalism and desperation. Once human, but transformed by hunger into something that can never be satisfied. It doesn't kill quickly because death isn't what it wants. It wants the terror, the despair, the slow dissolution of sanity. And the Canadian military knows. They've known for decades. They send soldiers into those woods as tribute, as payment, to keep it contained in that frozen wilderness, away from populated areas. We weren't there for training. We were there to feed it. Last week, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a photograph, a Chinook helicopter, soldiers loading equipment, a briefing room, and a note typed on military letterhead. Operation Frostbite, February 2025. Thank you for your previous service to this program. Your experience will help train the next unit. They're sending more soldiers into those woods right now, as I write this. And in the frozen darkness, 60 kilometers northeast of Fort McMurray, something ancient and hungry is waiting. It's always waiting. It knows their names before they even hear it coming. I still wake up sometimes, certain I hear whispering outside my window. The doctors say it's PTSD. They say trauma echoes. Maybe they're right, but on the coldest nights, when the wind sounds almost like words, I wonder, what if the Wendigo doesn't just hunt in the woods? What if some hungers can't be contained? What if by surviving, I brought something back with me? Not in my pack, but inside, carved into memory and bone. I don't have answers, only questions. And on winter nights, when I hear my name whispered in the dark, I choose not to answer. I suggest you do the same.